Welcome, trusted advisors. This is the podcast where we explore what it really takes to build, grow and sustain a thriving financial planning business. Every fortnight, you'll hear candid conversations with the leaders, innovators and trailblazers of our profession. People who have navigated the challenges, embraced the opportunities and are willing to share what they've learned along the way. If you're curious, ambitious and committed to raising the bar in advice, you're in the right place. Today I'm joined by Scott Taylor and Ashley Pickett from Everest Wealth. Scott and his business partner, Alex Luck, started Everest 8 years ago off the back of a conversation on a golf course. And as Scott tells me, all good things happen on a golf course. They bootstrapped the business from scratch, running free seminars for paramedics and picking up 80 clients in the first 12 months. Today they've grown to a team of over 60 people across Australia and the Philippines, and they're receiving upwards of 100 warm referrals a month through partnerships with some of Australia's biggest finance podcasts, including She's on the Money with Victoria Devine, My Millennial Money with Glenn James, Equity Mates, Rask Media and Ladies Finance Club. We talk about how those podcast partnerships actually work and the data-driven approach they've taken to tracking conversion rates by lead source and by advisor. We've led to some really interesting insights about matching the right advisor to the right client. We also get into the technology side, and this is where Ashley really takes the centre stage. He's been the driving force behind Everest's adoption of AI tools, from using Marloo for file noting and SOA generation, to building a custom client data collection portal using Claude code, hosted on AWS. Ashley spent 3 to 4 months training Marloo to write advice documents in Everest's tone and style, and the results have been significant, cutting document production time roughly in half, with ambitions to halve it again. There's a great conversation about the culture of experimentation they've built, where a graduate 3 months into the job built a transaction categorisation tool that transformed how they analysed client cash flow. And we touch on a real mindset shift for Scott. After 8 years of predominantly offering one-off advice to younger clients, they've recently added around 50 ongoing clients in just 6 months, simply by giving every client the choice and letting them decide what value looks like. It's a conversation about curiosity, about not being afraid to start, about what's possible when you give your team the freedom to find better ways to do things. Let's get into it. Welcome, Scott Taylor and Ashley Pickett to the Trusted Advisor podcast.
Thanks for having us, Rob. Great to be here.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for joining me, guys. This came about at pretty short notice with you two because I was having a chat to you just a couple of weeks ago, Scott. We're talking about our business, yours and ours, and we're swapping notes. And you're one of those firms that's become very tech forward and jumped on the available technology to really advance the productivity of your team. So I got very interested very quickly about that and said I'd love to have a chat to you in more detail on it. And that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to share a lot of what you guys have been up to, which is really interesting, on improving the way in which your business functions using the available tech in the market today. Before we get there though, Scott, I'd like to start with a bit of a backstory on Everest Wealth. You kind of kicked it off with a specific purpose of who you were going to serve. You and Alex Luck, your business partner, started it about 8 years ago off the back of a game of golf. As you said to me, all good things happen on a golf course. That's not my case because I'm not a very good golfer. But
Likewise, yeah.
But business obviously can happen there. So tell us how that came about, the kick-off with you and Alex kicking off the business off together 8 years ago.
Yeah. So it's actually eight years today. We just had a hike in the boardroom, which was really nice.
Well, there you go. We're recording this on Monday, the 10th of August, 8 years to the day.
There you go. Yeah. So 8 years ago, we were both looking for our next kind of career move. Myself getting out of the kind of corporate BDM landscape, and Alex looking for his next kind of move as an advisor. And we were trading notes on some of the discussions we had around where we might go and who we were talking to. And what kept coming back was there was nothing that was necessarily really resonating with us. And on a golf course, when we were playing pretty average, we both looked at each other. I think it was on the 8th or 9th hole, finishing up, and we were like, why don't we just give this a go? Alex said that to me, and I just kind of laughed it off. Went home, went to bed, woke up the next morning and sent him a text and said, let's do it. And yeah, we haven't kind of looked back. So that's how it kind of came about. And from there, yeah, it's been a great journey, a lot of blood, sweat and a few tears. But yeah, it's been a great journey these last 8 years.
You set yourself to approach the type of client very intentionally that you, perhaps you didn't, in fact. I think you said you bootstrapped the business from scratch by running seminars for paramedics and picked up about 80 clients in the first 12 months. Walk us through that and how it came about.
We made a conscious decision that we didn't want to go into debt to start off with. So we didn't buy a book of business, or I obviously didn't have a book, and Alex didn't have a book to bring across with him. So we're kind of scrounging around, what do we do? How do we start this thing off? So we did the typical mortgage brokers and accountants and try and ingrain ourselves with some referral partners. But what kind of chance of luck or right time, right place was one of Alex's best mates was a paramedic. They were losing some of their employee-funded insurance, and none of the paramedics really understood the impact that was going to have on them. So we decided to run these free seminars at the AMP office. So I called upon my old employer to help us out. And we hosted 4 seminars across 2 weeks, and to our surprise, got over 100 attendees, and 80 of those signed up as clients of ours shortly after. And that's kind of what cash flowed the business for the first 12 months and really enabled us to not have to worry financially. And that's where Ashley came in as our first employee 9 or 10 months later. And so, that's kind of how we kicked it off.
Yeah, right. And I'll come to you in a second, Ashley, because you've been doing some pretty cool stuff in the business, especially of late. Obviously, you've been there a long time now, but you've kind of picked up the mantle of being the tech champion inside the business. So we'll come to that in a second if I can, because that's the bit that obviously everyone wants to hear about, and you've really jumped all over it. But I want to spend a second longer with you, Scott, on this way in which you it's an amazing story that you went from 0 to 80 clients quickly on the back of that opportunity with the paramedics. And that was kind of, fortuitous, but also, good luck happens to those who are putting themselves out there and giving themselves a chance. But you're now getting, and we've titled the episode 100 warm referrals a month, you're getting about 100 warm referrals a month now through podcast partnerships, which I've heard of this happening, and I kind of know a couple of businesses that have tapped into this market. You're working with She's on the Money with Victoria Devine, My Millennial Money with Glenn James, Equity Mates, Rask Media, and Ladies Finance Club, amongst others. Tell us a bit more about how that got started as well after those first 80 clients through the paramedic connection, and how the whole system works around those referrals from podcast influencers.
Yeah, great. So this is really, for the last 5 years, been the engine or the source of our kind of referrals as a business. It was about 5 to 6 years ago now, another advisor in Melbourne, Sky Wealth, that we know really well through our days at Synchron, introduced us to Glenn James. He was getting leads in Western Australia, and Phil couldn't kind of keep up with the amount that he was getting. So he was like, do you guys want them?
So just for specifics, Phil Thompson, principal at Sky Wealth, shared a stage with him at the FAAA Congress here in Perth last year. He was talking about how he's built his business, very specialist in risk, off the back of these introductions as well. So, shout out to Phil. He's doing obviously great work there too.
Certainly is, and a great guy too. So, he put us in touch with Glenn. Glenn started sending us some referrals. We must have done a good job because he kept sending them. And then he put us in touch with Victoria. And that's really where the numbers game changed, because Victoria's reach and podcasts under She's on the Money is huge. The biggest kind of podcast for finances to younger women. So from there, we're working really closely with them for a good year, and our referrals were 40 to 50 a month. And then we decided to go and approach Equity Mates, Rask Media, Ladies Finance Club around how the great work we're doing with She's on the Money and My Millennial Money, and whether we could replicate that with them. And the benefit for them is it's another revenue stream. So we pay a revenue split or a fee per successful referral. They're all the same. So there's no one's not getting a higher amount than the other. We did that very deliberately to ensure fairness with that. But that's kind of how it launched. And now on average, probably a bit more than 100, 120, 130 a most months in terms of warm referrals, and then having 30 to 40 initial meetings a week as a result across our advice team.
Yeah, that's incredible. Those numbers are just, for a lot of businesses, they think, how do you deal with that? And I think the way you deal with it is grow your team quickly, because I've seen you guys start 8 years ago you got a big team now. How many people in the team roughly now?
Yeah, so we've got 62, 32 on Australian shores, and then 30 staff members in the Philippines.
Yeah, that's rapid, 60 odd staff over 8 years. So yeah, that's how you cope with that volume. I'm going to make people wait for the conversation with you and I, Ash. So just everyone who's waiting to hear what Ashley's got to say on technology, you got to wait a bit longer. I've got more questions for Scott before we get to him. Scott, you track conversion rates by lead source and by advisor, and you picked up the Equity Mates conversions. You found that they improved a lot once you matched the older clients that were coming through Equity Mates with the more senior advisors in your team. How important has that data-driven approach been to actually improving everything you do, tracking what's coming through?
Yeah, huge, because we've had 5 advisors go through their PY with us. So on the earlier end of their career journey, in their mid to late 20s. And then we've got some advisors that have been doing it for 10 plus years, myself now 8 years. So I wouldn't say we're senior, but we're more experienced. And what we were finding was we were just handing out the referrals based on who was available. And evenly spreading them without any real method around, Ashley works better with this type of client or Scott works better with this type of client. It's just who's available. We get our 10, 15 each, and then off we go. What we found, though, when we started looking into the data was the conversion rates for Equity Mates was a lot lower than the referrals that Glenn sends us. And we couldn't kind of understand why on the surface. So let's look a bit deeper. And we had our data, which Ashley had built out, puts it in a nice report that could easily see conversion by advisor per referral source. And then that told a story, because the conversion for Equity Mates from the newer advisors was very low, but to the ones that are a bit more experienced was actually quite high or normal compared to the other referral partners. So then what we did moving forward was pair, when Equity Mates refer someone in, they get kind of one of the 4 more senior or experienced advisors, and that improved, I guess, our overall conversion, and then also the client journey. So it's super important to us, given the volume that we work with, to have data that's accurate, but also timely, and we're not waiting 1 or 2 months for that data and then trying to make a decision. It's kind of there in front of us and is kind of active day in, day out.
Yeah, and because you are very data-driven, I know you know the specifics of your average client type, your avatar. When I asked you the question, you said, yes, it's a 33-year-old female, and 65% of your client base are in fact women. Obviously, it speaks to Victoria's influence on the She's on the Money podcast. Your team is also 68% female, so you've got a good symbiosis there between the client type and your advice team. How deliberately did you design for that, or did the referral sources kind of shape it for you?
Referral sources shaped it for us. I guess the first year or so, 2 years, we were definitely, I think we didn't have any females that worked for us. We were a typical boys club, I guess, but it wasn't necessarily by design. It was, working with Victoria then led us to getting more referrals that were females, which has been fantastic for us. Then from there, what we found was by working with Victoria and She's on the Money, there was a lot of advisors or support staff that listened to a podcast around Australia that actively reached out to us looking to see if we had any opportunities.
Wow.
So 4 or 5 of our staff members over the last couple of years have reached out saying, I want to work with you guys because I want to work closely with the team that are helping her kind of listeners and that demographic. So that's kind of how it's kind of, I guess, been centered around Victoria, but it hasn't necessarily been, we need to only hire females or we're only working with females. It's just been through the referral source.
What an unexpected benefit. You would have probably thought you're out there talking to a client audience, trying to attract them, but you actually attracted the advisor type as well, that you wanted to serve that audience. So you did some recruiting as well as on the advisor side, not just on the client side. Well done. You also made a conscious decision to offer predominantly one-off advice, and that probably speaks to more the client type you're dealing with, the younger client, and you're not mandating ongoing relationships with those clients. What was the thinking behind that at the time? I had an interview with Rebecca Ty from Game Plan Wealth Advisors recently, and Rebecca approaches this audience as well, directly the younger audience. How does it connect to your vision of, or your mission, if you like, of helping as many young Australians as possible create wealth that they never imagined? That is your mission statement, is it not?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So what we felt was if each of our advisors have 150 ongoing clients, they're going to be pretty tapped out and won't be able to see too many new clients unless you've got significant productivity through the business or efficiencies. So we made that conscious decision of only offering it or having clients as ongoing clients that really needed it. Therefore, we could have an intense relationship for 3 or 4 months, get someone set up, provide them great advice, and then hand the reins back to them, review their insurances once a year, hear if they need us in the future. But what that then enables the advisors is to see more new clients week in, week out, rather than being kind of tied down by ongoing review clients. It was also what we found was the demographic we were working with, people in their 20s, 30s, early 40s. There wasn't necessarily a need for ongoing advice. A lot of these people coming through the podcast are relatively switched on. They know a bit already, sometimes a bit to be dangerous, sometimes a bit to know what they're doing and just getting a bit of a sense check. But a lot of the time we educate, upskill clients so they know what the plan is for the next 2, 3, 4 years, and they're quite comfortable taking the reins. And now we've been going 8 years. It's quite often every couple of weeks we'll get a few clients come back to us and go, I saw you 4 years ago, we did this and I've achieved it. And it's a great feeling, as I know it is, working with a client on an ongoing basis. But it's also a great feeling because they put that plan into place and they stuck to it. And two, they saw immense value 4 years ago, so they've come back to you. So yeah, that's where it kind of stemmed from early days.
Yeah. Now, this is a question for either of you. I know Ashley hasn't spoken yet, but I've got a whole bunch of questions for him lined up. So I'll let either of you take this one. You place cash flow planning at the center of your advice. And I say this could be either of you because I know Ashley's been instrumental in how to actually help manage this. But you've talked about clients who save thousands of dollars a month, but it turns out they come in, they say, I save X dollars per month, but you found out that they say that on a good month. 3 months out of 12, they might save that amount. But what you actually went down to transaction level visibility to see what clients are actually spending versus what they think they're spending. Scott's saying, give me that one. Why has it been so critical for your client group to get to that level of transaction visibility, and how did you go about doing it?
Yeah, so I will hand over to Ash. I won't steal the limelight. Yeah, essentially, what we're finding was most of our clients, they have pretty large lifestyle cash flow goals, whether it's upgrading their home, purchasing their first home, doing significant renovations, starting a family, growing their family, retiring early. It all involves money, of course, but then also with all those situations, we need to have a really good understanding of their outgoings. And most people will tell you what they believe they can save per month, and they're not necessarily lying on purpose, but sometimes they probably are. But it's usually very inaccurate, is what we were finding. So we didn't want to go, oh, you can save $2,000 a month, Rob. Great. You can easily afford to see out 12 months of mat leave. You can upgrade your home to a $1.5 million place. And then you get to doing it and it's like, I can't afford it. I've got no money left. And what we were finding was people go on a holiday and they spend 10 or 20 grand. And for the 11 months of the year, they can save a couple grand a month, but they don't take into account that 1 or 2 months of the year where they go way over that. And if you average it out, it's normally far less. So what we used to do was utilize My Prosperity to review their transactions. But then Ash and the team here have built a cash flow modeling tool, which effectively takes their transactions and within minutes categorises them accurately over the last 12 months into where they have actually spent money. And it's a huge value add for our demographic of clients we deal with, for them to go, this is where I feel I'm at, this is where I actually am at, and this is where I need to be at to achieve the goals. And it really helps us with having trade-off discussions of maybe not all those goals are achievable, or we push the time frame out. Maybe we need to earn more money, easier said than done. Or do we look at cutting back in some areas? And we usually find when you're having those conversations, because there's a reason or a motivation for it, people then tend to stick to it because, again, of that motivating factor of children upgrading the home or whatever it may be that they're striving for. I'm not sure, Ash, if you just want to touch on the cash flow kind of tool that you built.
Yeah, I think like this can partly be my segue to your question here, Rob, in the sense that we've had a few of our staff that have really started to excel in ways to streamline certain processes, and that cash flow one is a great point to talk upon. You mentioned earlier around the importance of data as well, and what one of our grads who had just been with us for about 3 months did was change the whole system in which we analyse the transactions to get a proper understanding for where the clients are living, what's their address, and then comparing all of their relevant transactions based on their bank data feed per se, comparing that with their location, the distance between their address and that location, to then start to determine and at least put some reasoning behind, has this person been on holiday for these transactions? Is it then overseas to therefore justify that level of expense as well? And really start to build in certain parameters when doing that analysis too.
Yeah. And you gave your team essentially license to this. Ash, I know you've been kind of championing the technology development inside Everest Wealth, but you've kind of encouraged people as they come in to explore ways to improve the productivity of the business. And this was one of those. You said, I think this grad had been with you for 3 months, and they kind of saw that they could improve the way in which you took that transaction data from your clients who downloaded it from their internet banking, I gather, and then sent you through an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file.
Yeah, and I think like it really does highlight the culture of change, right? And we've tried really hard to really emphasize that to our team, that if someone comes in, sees a process and thinks, why is it done that way? And if it's not done in the most effective way, 100% we give them the full power to stand up and go, okay, this is a better solution to do so. We kind of challenge that old approach of it's been done this way in the past, this is why it has to be done this way now. And that really has paid dividends within the business as well. It's really encouraged everyone to start to be creative with their own type of work they're doing, create certain procedures and things that allow them to do things in a more accurate or effective way.
Yeah. And tell me about how you started on the path working with Marlou, because that was a critical starting position for you to go and explore what options you could use to fast track the way advice was being produced. And this was more of a conference type arrangement. You met with someone and started having a conversation. Tell us how it came about and how the whole team sort of, after they saw what you were doing with it when you first were testing it, how they quickly adopted it after they saw what it could do.
I quite like telling this story in the sense that when we initially started out with the whole automation space or streamlining the business, we were doing, as a lot of practices were doing to begin with, was automating the file note process of going through businesses where you have to record your meeting. You then get a file note sent to you 15 to 30 minutes after said meeting was done. Yes, it worked in some way, shape or form, right? But what we really struggled with was that the team weren't adopting that change. And I think that really ingrained in me specifically that the change is so hard to encourage in people. And as I'll touch on in a minute, that isn't actually the case. So we started out with that file noting tool. I bumped into one of the owners, Shaq of Marlou, at a conference at one of the Australian Wealth Management conferences a little over a year now. Bumped into him and I saw him at this conference and he was explaining what their product did at the time, which was Marlou, and it was very much centralised around the whole file noting piece. I went into it with a bit of skepticism to begin with. I was like, look, we're already pretty comfortable with our file noting approach, thanks. He then said, look, give me a little bit of time. So he demonstrated to me their product and I was really impressed with it. So we decided to give it a go. Originally with purely the file noting intention. So we could sit in on meetings. It sits there as a buddy tool and generates a file note that's effective afterwards. And this was then really where I started to realise that change isn't that hard to endorse within the business. So I started using Marlou by myself, for example, or just testing it within the business. My associate that day really liked the idea of Marlou, so they were like, oh, look, can I have access to this as well? I gave it to them. By the end of the week, about 70 to 80% of the entire business were purely using it, not out of being required to use it, but out of necessity because it was simply a more superior product in that case. And that, I think, for us was really that light bulb moment to go, okay, if a product is good enough, people are going to adopt it and use it properly as well. And that really was that launch pad to then start to go into the SOA generation and start to build that further.
Yeah, well, tell us about that, because that's the one a lot of people are trying to solve for, and clearly you guys have jumped in head first. You spent about 3 to 4 months, you said, Ash, building the SOA generation template inside Marlou. And a lot of people are still hearing of Claris and Paradino and Marlou and others that are doing work in this space. When you've gone on full bore with Marlou, walk me through what you actually had to do to make Marlou deliver advice the way you wanted to do it. What were you training it to understand about Everest Wright's advice?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first thing to note probably is that it was very early days within the Marlou product as well, right? I was helping them develop their document generation tool itself. It didn't necessarily exist as of that point. So it was a lot more manual than I suppose what it would be today. But what I was really trying to do was spending the first 3 to 4 months building this template to understand the tone of the document we're trying to convey. So it's a consistent tool every single time we're generating something, as well as also other catch points as well. So if we are recommending this, then make sure you show this. And then the next level was then making sure it understood the supporting documents being provided so that the team could consistently give it certain tools, certain file notes, certain modeling pieces. It can interpret all of that information and then produce it into a consistent statement of advice document every single time without slipping up or missing certain areas as well, which is why it took a little bit of time to build that. But I really feel that we did get it to a consistent point where, as we talked about earlier prior, Rob, we've started without taking the full day to make a document. Now it's down to about half that, with our goal of really ideally getting it then closer to that 2-hour mark as well.
Yeah, wow. And you built a template, but giving it the context it needs to be able to write the advice document the way you would want it written. So tell me let's dig into this a bit further because people are going to want to know specifically. So you'll give it a product comparison, you'll give it some modeling perhaps, you'll give it maybe PDSs or an Excel spreadsheet showing one product versus another. What are you feeding it to actually be able to generate that advice document?
So the first piece of information that it would have would be the meeting itself, from whether it be the initial meeting with that client, the strategy meetings being had with that client as well. It's got all of that stored in the background. You can select those to form part of the advice itself, which I think really come in handy to pre-fill and pre-build the alternative section of a statement of advice, right? It says, okay, we considered doing this, however, discounted it because of A, B, and C. That's not just some made-up alternative in that case. It really is backed with the conversations that have been had. So we decided on an emergency fund of X, Y, Z because of the actual reasonings that have happened in that meeting as well, which I think then really conveys into the SOA to be a far more of a bespoke document too. But I suppose back to your question around what are we actually feeding it and providing it, it is all of those things. It's the recommended insurance quote, for example. It is the omnium comparison of the differing insurers so that it's got all of that background information. And that's where building out the template to your bespoke version really works the best because it's then saying, okay, look for this type of document to understand or pull out this piece of information. So whether it be the insurance commission that's been stated, for example, or the stamp duty portion of the insurance premium, it's looking specifically for those with then the ability to customize that so it is showing exactly what your client needs to see in that document.
Okay, you were a very early adopter and Malu wasn't as developed as it is today. If someone approached Malu today, what sort of experience would they get? Would they need to go through a similar template building process, or has it come a fair way even to the extent that they wouldn't need to necessarily take long at all to get up and running with Malu?
Yeah, it's vastly different now for how far they've come in the last 12 months. And not even just saying that either from pure personal experience. So for example, Scott asked me to create a fact find template the other day into Malu. He walked past me later on that afternoon. I was like, oh, here you go. And he was quite surprised that I'd immediately turned it into something that we could actively use because now they really do have the ability to upload all of your existing documents, for example. So I gave it 7 fact finds and said, generate me a fact find template, in which it did. So it interpreted all of those 7 documents, understood the potential differing areas. So some might have been single clients, some might have been couples, some might have been retirees. It understood all the differing, varying areas and then built it into that template to something to look out for when then providing it. And they've also now built in the ability to really edit it easily using the AI tools off to the side as well. So back when I was originally doing it, I was just having to write the relevant instructions in their instruction section. But now you can simply write in the chat corner in the bottom of it saying, create this or make this change in the document. It will then go and find that and do it for the person.
Okay, let's dig into that data collection that you've developed in a day. When Scott mentioned it in the morning, you had it in the afternoon. Is that the custom client data collection portal that you built using Claude Code? Is that different?
No, so that one specifically there that I was just saying was purely the fact find summary for a client that they're then signing off on saying, yes, this is our financial position that we weren't previously generating out of, say, a midwinter. We then wanted to bring that more onto Malu, so I gave it all of those examples to do that.
Okay, but you then went about building this client data collection portal using Claude Code. So not satisfied purely that Malu could do everything for you. You actually obviously are building out tools that are supporting your ability to generate advice through Malu. You're hosting that on Amazon Web Services based in Sydney, I understand. You're collecting data from clients. Tell us how you came to that decision to build your own and what you'd already tried that wasn't quite cutting it. I think Scott mentioned My Prosperity a little earlier. Is that where you were, or even before that, perhaps, before you decided, no, we've got to build our own version of this to make it work?
Yeah, and I think that really was born out of necessity, right? In terms of the client friction, especially in such a high volume business like we are, we want to make it as frictionless as possible. And yes, as you mentioned, we were previously using a tool like My Prosperity to gather that client information. We were then sending the client a link for them to be able to sign in, log in, fill out the relevant questions as well. We were finding there was so much friction involved. They might not be able to log in. They would email us. We would have to email My Prosperity. We'd have to wait a while for them to respond, or the client would say this question's not very clear or not mandatory, for example, and we would then send a list of saying we would like to make all of these changes. We might get an email a week later saying we're not sure what specific ones you want changed here or whether we have interpreted it correctly. And don't get me wrong, it was a good product for what we were using it for, but we then really decided to take the matters into our own hands and decide to have all of that data to ourselves as well and be able to bespokely customize the questionnaires for the clients, which has really repaid itself in droves by giving the most seamless experience as possible in that tool that we built.
Tell me about the process you went through to audit the robust nature of that tool having been built by Claude Code and check how you managed the privacy question that comes out of that. You've been through a pretty thorough exercise here to sort of test it and try to see that it passes all the tests around privacy and cybersecurity.
Yeah, and I'll get Scott to jump in here as well, but we were extremely conscious around making sure we were doing it properly the first time around that we were doing it. So yes, we built the majority of the platform through Claude Code by designing it in Claude Design and things as well to then make it to a point where it could potentially then go live. But that is where we then started consulting third-party developers to do a full audit of the platform as well, make sure the level of encryption is up to scratch, make sure the data is stored in certain areas too, because that really is at the forefront of why we were doing it, to make sure that data is secure as well.
So Ash did that side, and then on my side, from kind of being a responsible manager of the license, you plugged into our licensee services team, kind of showed them what we were doing to get their feedback. We use an external auditor and compliance team, so we plugged into them to get their feedback, and then also checked in with our cyber insurance team to kind of get their feedback. And so we collated that all and then decided that it was okay to keep pushing forward, and we felt really secure and safe with the levels of encryption and privacy that we had for our clients moving forward, because like with most financial advisors, we hold so much detail and information, and they're able now through the portal that Ash has created as a one-stop shop. So their questions are kind of seamless, from your financial position to your kids to your insurance health history. There's a full kind of almost insurance application in there. You can upload all your pay slips, your IDs. So everything's in one place now. Whereas before it was My Prosperity. Before that it was jot forms. So we were sending people 4 or 5 questionnaires. Before that it was handwritten fact find. So we've come a long way, but with that comes risk as well. So yeah, that's been very much the forefront of whenever we put something like this in place.
Episode 48, the last one, with Ivan Gower and Andrew Gardner from RetireMap. Episode 48, the one just before this, very tech-focused sort of conversations I'm having, because it's interesting to me as well as everyone else listening, I'm sure. Andrew said there's 3 choke points in a device business: the data gathering piece, the plan production, which you've had a crack at as well, and the middle piece, which is the modelling piece. And that's what RetireMap's achieving or working to achieve for businesses as well, to make that a more seamless and straightforward process. But you've had a crack at the other 2 in a really serious way. So that Marlo is really your plan production engine now, and your portal, you're self-built using Claude Design, Claude Code, is the data collection piece. So you've potentially cracked 2 of the big nuts here that people are trying to solve for to make the business run. Because you are such a high volume business, you've had to kind of, by necessity, as you put, Ash, by necessity, we had to build something to make us be able to absorb the volume of work we're getting. How close do you feel like saying we've really nailed these 2 front and back end pieces? Is it kind of at 80% of where you'd like it to be? Can you imagine what it needs to do to get to the point where you think it's kind of solved all the issues there?
I personally think we've scratched the surface. Right, it's really shown me where all of the possibilities now do lie. The best indicator of that is the ability to access data that we wouldn't necessarily have otherwise seen, for example, right? So in the past, when we were sending out questionnaires, we would just only hear negative complaints from people that were eventually disgruntled enough to say, hey, this isn't great or this should be fixed. But now we have the full visibility to look at our portal that we've sent out and see, okay, what is the average time a certain user is spending on a section? Are they spending more than the average? Okay, if they are, maybe they now need a phone call to simply help them through the process a little bit faster, for example. Or also just understanding, hey, the insurance section takes on average 32 minutes of the entire questionnaire. Therefore, maybe let's now focus on training the advisors when they're having initial meetings with clients to really emphasize why we spend so much time on that initial data gathering as well. It really allows us now to get at the forefront and be upfront with clients as well in having these conversations. And that data is just going to continue to float throughout the remainder of the business as well. So we can then understand maybe how long it would take an associate to create the relevant work and so forth.
Yeah, getting that level of data or that intelligence of what's happening is so powerful, isn't it, to be able to act on those insights that it's giving you. So as you say, you're at the front edge of it, but you're also only just, as you put it, Ash, scratching the surface of what's still possible. So it's an exciting time to be in an advice business that can improve productivity in such dramatic ways. Scott, you mentioned how you have this young team and you've encouraged a real level of experimentation amongst the team to improve productivity. You told me you've got the graduate, about the 3-month graduate who built the transaction categorisation tool in Claude Code. How do you foster that kind of experimentation across the team within guardrails that you need to think about as an RM?
Yeah. So I guess we are a relatively young team. Most of the team are in their mid to late 20s to early 30s. So I think naturally there's that level of tech adoption and curiosity. But what we've kind of set out as a business is if you can find a better way to do something, then let's look into it and investigate it. It's not, hey, Ash, I think this sucks. Can you fix it? It's, I'll get my hands dirty. I'll see if there's a better way. And then I'll present it to Ash or to Scott. And then they'll go do the relevant checks before it's actually implemented. And I guess what we've said to the team and the 3-month grad that's been with us was, if you can make it more efficient, then you'll have more time and we'll give you that time for learning to training. So he's now kind of significantly increased the time it takes to do his work in a day. We haven't then just lumped on more work to him. It's now, okay, that time can be now used for your growth. Go sit in on advisor meetings and see how they do things, and go get a BDM to come in to teach you about X, Y, and Z. So then I guess the fostering is, well, if we can kind of make our jobs more productive and more efficient, people aren't going to lose their jobs. It's going to mean that you can grow quicker through our business and kind of learn more quicker, rather than being scared of you're going to be putting yourself out of a job.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If you think there's nothing else left for us to do, then you're not trying very hard, are you? So once you've solved one problem, there's always a new problem. So you just move them up the scale to higher level tasks and activities that you really want to solve for. So as you say, accelerates their development, accelerates their learning opportunities. So there's so much more capability that comes with that time that's getting freed up by being more productive. And speaking of time being productive, you said that in the past, ongoing clients, you were a little reluctant to service them because you felt as though we couldn't see as many people if we had a book of clients to service. But in the last 6 months, you've added around 50 ongoing clients in the business, taking it from under about 200 to about 250, a 20% increase in a very short period of time. After 8 years of positioning yourself as a one-off advice firm, what triggered that shift for you, Scott? And what role has technology played now in maybe changing your thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess in the past, we were putting our own judgment on a lot of the conversations we were having with clients. They don't need ongoing advice, so I'm not going to really present it to them. And then we decided to shift our focus, because I'm not sure where the epiphany came from, but it was like, who are we to say whether it's valuable to the client or not? The client should be making that decision, not me as the advisor. I'm somewhat biased because I've got a lot more knowledge than them. So yes, I should give my opinion, but I shouldn't be kind of making that decision for them. And what we found was, we've started presenting our ongoing service to every client that we see, and just going, here's what we offer, here's what we charge, here's what I feel you should do. And then what we found is a huge lift in people taking that on, as you mentioned with those numbers. So that's been a conscious change in our mindset to, I guess, do the clients more justice, in our opinion. But what technology has allowed is that we can now service more clients. So each advisor can have a decent ongoing book and grow an ongoing book, but also still see new clients as well through the efficiencies and technology changes that we've already implemented and that we've got planned for the next 6 to 12 months too.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. And I want to spend a second recapping it, because you said that who are we to judge the value that people are seeing in what we potentially offer? And you've been really not oriented around trying to find the ongoing client. You've been oriented around looking after them one-off. And so you're not trying to commit them to anything they don't want to commit to. In fact, if anything, you're going the opposite way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet, just by literally giving them the choice, by saying it's you to decide what value you see in what we're doing. And so who are we as advisors, or who is even the regulator who looks at, Scott, can I judge you as a regulator whether you're giving value to that client or not? Well, who's the best judge of that other than the client?
Yeah.
No one could possibly be. And I know that there's a subjective view for the client to make, but I think people look at that and say, well, they've got X amount of money, therefore we relate the fee to the money they have, and therefore that's how they should be determining the value of what they're getting. But what we do is so much more than just about the money they have. And so as practitioners, giving them freedom to choose, knowing you're oriented to not worry whether they choose one or the other, you're happy to take either scenario. What a powerful place to get to and really give them that ultimate choice. I just wanted to spend a second on that because I think it's such an important point to make, because I think some observers who aren't us giving client advice would think, oh, you're just trying to sell them an ongoing service because that's in your interests. But in fact, you've been the opposite.
Yeah, it was a change in mindset for us as kind of business owners, business leaders, and then that's filtered down. And now the advisors taking that on, and they're even surprised. They're like, this client came on, I wouldn't have ever offered this type of client ongoing previously, and they said yes. So it's just kind of goes to show to us, it's like we're not being pushy with it, we're just putting the options on the table, and some people see value in it, even if we don't necessarily do ourselves.
Yeah, no, that's right. As you say, you've got the benefits of knowledge and years of experience. So how are you to determine what's best for them when really they have a sense of what value it is for them? So thanks for sharing that. I've got one more question for each of you, if that's okay. I know you've got a bit of a schedule to hit.
Yeah, of course.
Scott, you're 38. You love what you do. You're not thinking about an exit anytime soon. You're way too young for that. Your clients are going to age with you based on the demographic you've already got as a client group. What does Everest Wealth look like in 5 years from today, do you think?
Well, if you had asked me this question 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been where we are today. So 5 years' time. So I guess what we're aiming for, we're a national business already. So we've got an office in Melbourne. Most likely would look to get an office in Adelaide. So from a geography point of view, we'll have a few satellite offices with our head office being here in Perth. So, but our goal remains the same of helping as many young Australians as possible. And to that, we need more referrals. So that's where we're building out our own YouTube channel, our own TikTok channel to try and diversify our leads. So I envisage that, in 5 years' time, we'll have even more referrals on a monthly basis coming into us. We'll have probably double the amount of staff that we have, and we'll be way more efficient and productive as a team as well, which I'm really excited about. And 5 years in, like you said, our clients start growing with us, and we're just going to see that as a perfect opportunity to remarket to our existing net database of clients, that if for whatever reason we do get a bit quiet in the future, well, we've got thousands of clients that have been through advice with us, and we can just go back to it and go, hey, has anything changed? Do you want to catch up? But we're not doing that at the moment because there's not a need to right now.
And maybe not even a capacity issue right now either. But, as you say, you've got this great experience of working with clients who've come through, got one-off advice that had good experience with you but didn't need the ongoing support services. But just being able to be a very data-driven business and capture that record, make sure that those people are connected still to you in one way or another. When things do change for them, obviously a great opportunity to reconnect when the time comes for them. It is a good time. I mean, you say it's exciting, and I think everyone who's in the space that we're in now that's actually adopting some of the technology that we're talking about here today would feel the same. It's such a great opportunity to become more productive and serve more people. And that's what we're in this game to do. We actually get the value and the purpose from helping as many people as possible and seeing how we can change the direction of their financial life and their life more broadly. So I love that vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, 12 months ago, we were doing hardly anything of what we're doing today. So we were just doing, I think, file notes, correct me if I'm wrong, Ash, which is what most businesses are now doing. That's the norm. I think the norm will be kind of what we're doing in 12 months' time. So it's just going to be this exponential growth, I feel, in efficiencies, productivity, and it's just going to be, and there's just going to be more time for each of us to be client-facing, which if you ask most of our team, that's what we love doing, is being in front of clients, speaking to clients, helping clients. So it's just going to be a better client experience at the end of the day.
5 years is a long time, isn't it, when you think of what you've done in a year? So you think, well, in 5 years, at this rate, it'll be hard to imagine what you'll be doing in 5 years. So, Ash, I've got one final question. It's for you. You have been, with really great support from Scott and Alex, driving the business forward. You've been one to really grab the baton on the technology and see what's possible. For a firm listening to this, thinking about they need to start somewhere with AI, and you've just jumped in Claude Code and you've built tools, what's the one thing you'd tell them to do right now this week to move them forward in the same way you guys have developed your business?
I think it would probably really relate to be interested in it. Rather in the sense that get started, give it a go, have a start to poke around and look what it can potentially do, try something new, and the change then inadvertently comes from that. Only once you've started doing do you then start to really take that higher level look and go, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. They're actually doing this that way. If I could have done this one the other way instead, for example. So it really is taking the smallest step and not being afraid that other people aren't going to adopt the change. Because as we've found, that change naturally comes if it's good enough anyway. It's not just being adverse to change for the sake of it. It's because it is slightly harder than what it is to begin with.
Yeah, everyone worries about change management in business, and Scott and Alex would no doubt think about that, but you just went about saying, well, let's just test it. I'll just explore it, see what's possible. You build something and it works, and you go, this is working, and people look and go like, oh, can I get that? So you don't have to try and change people by force or by persuasion. They simply quickly adopt something they see as far better than what they've been doing. And I guess that's the lesson you've learned along the way too.
Exactly. And if they're not adopting it, that's fine. It's one idea. You've tried something and now you know that way potentially doesn't work. Explore then the next avenue and carry on that way.
And I think as well, I'm 38 and you said I'm quite young, which is thanks, Rob, but I don't feel it.
Comparatively.
But I definitely, working with the team here, I feel like a bit of a dinosaur. But even I had this wrong kind of idea on AI, that it was too difficult. It was something for the young kids to kind of worry about, and I can barely kind of change over my iPhone to a new iPhone that I was struggling with on the weekends. But what I've found is with Claude or Marlu, it actually, once you get started, isn't that hard. I found it challenging to get my head around it. But once I jumped in, and that wasn't even with the help of Ash or anyone, it was just, all right, everyone's using Claude, I'll see what this is about, and just started playing around. And before you know it, you're a semi-pro at it. And I don't feel like I've got any real expertise there. My team obviously do, which I'm really grateful for. But even if you're a one-man band out there and kind of head in the sand with this, I'd encourage you to get your head out of the sand and just start talking to people, get Marlu, Paradino out to see you and just see what the possibilities are, because it will transform your business.
You've reminded me, I listened to a number of podcasts, and a lot of the people who are very forward-thinking in technology are saying the greatest superpower a human being has is curiosity, the ability to actually not accept the status quo and be curious of what's possible. And what you've both just described is exactly that, just to say, I'm going to remain curious and keep exploring, because the way we're doing things is changing rapidly, and it can be a bit intimidating. You're thinking it's changing so fast, I can't keep up. But as you say, if you're curious enough just to at least experiment, explore, you actually can find what's possible, because you can ask these LLMs exactly what it is you want to understand. It'll tell you what you can do and what you can't do anyway. So you've got a teacher there in your pocket now, which is quite incredible. I applaud you both. And Alex, obviously, as your other business partner, you've obviously growing the business very rapidly, and it's pivoting now to serve clients in the way they want to be served as well for ongoing services, where in the past you thought that maybe wasn't the thing they would want. It's exciting to see a business that is young, relatively. Scott, you say you're a dinosaur. I don't know what that makes me. Great trajectory for you guys. In full disclosure, when we have a client type that isn't suitable to us, this younger client type looking for one-off advice, we obviously do send our work to you guys for that, and we really appreciate that you take those clients and look after them. We're comfortable with that arrangement because we know the great work that you guys do. So Scott Taylor, Ashley Pickett, thank you both for joining me today on the Trusted Advisor podcast.
Been great fun. Thanks, Rob, for having us.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning into the Trusted Advisor. I hope today's conversation brought you new insights and inspiration for growing your business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast platform, leave a review and share it with others in the industry. And don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn for updates on future episodes. Until next time, keep building trust, embracing innovation and driving success in your practice.